reaching out to the sick. On World Day of the Sick, that was the 11th of February, Pope Francis chose the theme from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are overburdened, I will give you rest." The stress is on "I will give you rest," the Lord. And yet, when we reach out to the sick, today many are reaching out to the sick for various reasons. Family members are reaching out to the sick. Relations are reaching out to the sick with their own concerns. Friends with their advice. Very often home remedies, their own particular diagnosis. Then there are doctors and therapists and nurses and all kinds of people, insurance agents tripping in to the room to offer their advice. Christian priests and laymen as well, all Christians, take the patient to Jesus and bring Jesus to you. Your spiritual strength makes you pray, makes you read the scriptures, and above all, makes you give the sacraments of the Eucharist, the anointing, reconciliation to those who need it most. But often enough, people do not find that their sickness finds an answer. Long sicknesses can become stressful and lead to confusion. Jesus heals. Jesus strengthens. Jesus gives you power. It is not the power of those who reach out to the sick. It is not the strength of those who reach out to the sick. It is not the inspiration of those who reach out to the sick, but it is Jesus. But don't be diffident. Don't get upset. Don't feel weak. Why? Often enough our experience seems to tell us, you have been praying for so many people, you pray on over so many people, nothing happens. And so everyone searches to bring in somebody else who's more powerful. Nobody has power except the power of Jesus. And when you feel diffident, when you feel weak and fragile, when you feel not up to the mark, when faced with certain sicknesses, and there are certain sicknesses, children are sick, youth are sick, married people are sick, old people are sick. Each one requires a different approach, a different attitude. And so when we reach out to the sick, we should not be diffident if we are with Jesus. In Jeremiah 1, so clearly it is said, "Go, prophet, go, I will put my words into your mouth and you will speak." Go, prophet, go. Jeremiah didn't feel that he knew very much. Jeremiah didn't know very much. But he was filled with the Lord, and he would hear the voice of the Lord telling him, "Go, prophet, go." He was full of his own weaknesses, his shortcomings, but "Go, prophet, go" empowered him. And later on he would say, "If I ever decide to keep quiet, my bones would burst within me." I had to go and tell people about what the Lord had to say. And we know Jesus would quote Isaiah later on, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has sent me to set people free." Jesus took those words from the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. And the Spirit of the Lord is upon every Christian who reaches out to others. Christians are empowered. At our baptism, we are given the Spirit. At our confirmation, we have the Spirit in a very special way, empowering us to go out. In our prayer life, we encounter the Spirit time and again, so that, empowered by the Spirit, we can go out and reach out towards others. Sickness is a time of grace. When we say sickness is a time of grace, we wait for the grace which is the love of the Lord, the strength of the Lord, the peace of the Lord. And therefore, this sickness, this hope, this courage that we get is not from the people who come to us, but through the people who come to us. It is the Lord. It is the power, the strength, the peace of the Lord. So often people go and visit the sick. They reach out to the sick with their own ideas, their own feelings, their own set of mantras, their own set of words and phrases, their own particular devotion and spirituality. But ultimately, going past all this, the sick at various stages will reach out depending on where they are. Children don't know what's going on, but parents call somebody to pray over them. Youth have their own preoccupations, their peer group. If they are sick, will they miss out? Not so much their studies, but their peer group, their best friends, those who they hang out with. What is going to happen? How will I explain? And if this sickness goes on for a bit too long, then they begin to get so restless. The old have their own preoccupations. I am not ready. And yet, so many of us are not empowering the sick, but we do our job. Some people visit because they are told to visit. They make it a social visit, but reaching out to the sick with this moment of grace behind our mind reaches out in much more than one way, but in many, many ways. Jesus reached out to the sick. Very often, they did not know who Jesus was, but the presence of Jesus made them feel a stunning presence that they could never ever explain or understand. And the Lord will lead and guide all those who seek His guidance. So often people don't have time for Jesus, but they are full of their own ideas, modern ways of counseling. Yes, it is required, but we also need Jesus. He is the healer. He went about doing good. That's what we are told in the Acts of the Apostles. Jesus went about doing good, not just as a social worker, but the good that He did was to set people free. They were new people all over again. Jesus came to give us a new heart, a new mind, a new spirit, a new direction in our life, so that whatever we do, in good times and in bad, it is Jesus. Now, when the Pope says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are overburdened," when he quotes this, he is inviting the world around us that are sick for various reasons. Bodily sickness, sickness in mind, sickness in our own ways of thinking, our feelings, our emotions. We are sick. Healing the body is sometimes just one aspect of the whole thing, but often enough, it is healing of our spirit. If we are unforgiving, no matter how often we are healed, there is a lurking suspicion that perhaps something is wrong somewhere because I have sinned. Sometimes when we reach out to the sick, they have their own preoccupations in their mind. Somebody has told them, you are a very nice person, but maybe you're suffering for the sins of others. And then it comes back to me when the blind man was healed and the people around asked, who sinned? Did he sin? Did his parents sin? And Jesus said, neither he sinned, nor his parents sinned, nor his ancestors sinned. It is for the greater glory of God that he was made blind, so that when he could see, people realized that Jesus was not just an ordinary person, but the Son of God who had power over nature. He had power over everything around him. In the Old Testament also, so clearly the Lord has said, what is this that I keep on hearing you saying, this same proverb again and again? The parents have eaten sour grapes and the children's teeth are on edge. Am I so unkind? Am I not compassionate so that I reach out to everyone according to their deeds? How can I punish someone who has not sinned because of his father and his mother? But there are others who say, but the Old Testament earlier on said something like that. But we know when Jesus came, he said not once, but so often, you have heard how it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say this to you. Jesus goes far beyond just what the earlier Old Testament had said. Then the prophets came, then Jesus came, always revealing slowly but surely the mind of the Heavenly Father, who was to set his people free. And one thing that doesn't allow people to be sufficient free when they do not know Jesus is sickness. So when we reach out to the sick, let us remember that we have to give Jesus, not our own ideas, not our own ways of thinking, not our own feelings, we don't play the doctor by advising people to go to this doctor and that doctor and eat this and swallow that. People have swallowed enough of advice that everyone has given. But we are a broken generation. Broken because the world has no time for God or for Jesus. And so we always hear people making a report, please share a short prayer. And then the report says, the meeting began with a short prayer. At other times we say the meeting began with a meaningful prayer, as if to say there are some prayers that are meaningless. But we want to cut short on our relationship with God so that we spend a lot of time on our relationship with others. What will we give them if we do not have Jesus? While Jesus heals through the doctors, Jesus heals through every other person who comes in the way. We don't understand. We don't have to understand. And even if God explained, we would never ever understand the overwhelming love and forgiveness of a God who does not wish us to suffer. We live in a passing world where people don't care of how much people suffer. Reaching out to the sick. Now we are worried about the coronavirus. What are we really worried about? Are we worried about how many people died in China? Or how many people died in India? Or how many people died all over the world? No. Our focus is, if so many people are sick, am I next? Am I next? And so we are very worried about ourselves. And Jesus always taught us to reach out towards others. Mother Teresa was always with the sick of the worst type. But not once did she ever teach us to say, certain types of sicknesses, please, they are gone cases, let them be alone. No way. She reached out to those who were reeking with all kinds of illnesses and sicknesses, with worms and maggots in their body, unperturbed about whether she would get it next. And she lived past 80. A rich life, full of Jesus, and she gave Jesus to others. What then is our take on this? Will we give Jesus to others? Or are we just social workers, going out, giving people psychological help, offering people alternate medicines? But who will give Jesus to others? Often enough, people give things, people give food, people give water, and say, yes, Jesus said that we ought to reach out towards others. But there are many other groups of people, many NGOs going around, hospitals, ashrams, homes for the aged, and the rest, giving people material benefits. After they have gone, and after all the bread and water and the biscuits and everything is swallowed, there is still an emptiness that is in everyone's hearts. What is this emptiness? We are made by God, And so we have this homing instinct of going back to Him. Along the time on earth, we are walking the same pilgrimage, the same journey. Everyone walks. We are all born and we will all die. What happens in between is what we make of our lives. And therefore, along the way, Jesus always is with us. We don't have to wonder, we don't have to do big things to pull Him down from heaven. Emmanuel, He was born at Christmas. Emmanuel, God with us. But we don't pay attention to this except at Christmas. And we say, God, Emmanuel, God with us. And who is this Jesus at Christmas? A baby. And so we don't want babies. We all feel that we are grown up. But there's God who is with us. He is with us in our prayer. He is with us in the scriptures. He is with us in the Eucharist. And therefore adoration. Paying attention to the Eucharistic Lord who comes to us in our weakness. The Eucharist is not a first prize for those who are good, but food for the hungry along the way. Food for the weak, lest they collapse along the way. Food that lasts, and that is why Jesus said, I know why you're following me, because you had bread for your stomachs. But I will give you a bread that will last forever. Work for bread that lasts, not for bread that will finally go away. And when the people said, Lord, give us that bread, He said, I will give you my flesh to eat and my blood to drink. And they all walked away. And Jesus turns to His chosen ones. Others have also gone. Will you also go? And therefore, when our choice is to make the sick people go through the life of grace that God gives them, are we going to turn away from Him? Or are we going to give Jesus? Are we going to give them our opinion? So often people say, common sense tells you this, common sense tells you that. But what about our spiritual sense? Every Christian is empowered with a Christian sense to reach out towards so many others. May the Lord help every one of us who reach out to the sick with Jesus. Give Jesus to others, and the peace and joy will fill your hearts. God bless you and thank you.